All right, on today's Best Practices episode for UAC, we talk with Dr. Jake Grinaker out of Fargo, North Dakota. And what we dive into is what we call the far side of the complexity arc and the pipe dream you have that, eventually you can step out of your clinic. And if you have everything in place, you create a business that you don't have to be in instead of a job you always have to be at. But the truth is, most of us learn that that's not really sustainable long term, maybe for a season, and then usually things start to go sideways. And so, how do you stay in your business, give your superpowers to that business, continue to grow the clinic and the practice? That's the conversation. I think you're going to find a ton of value out of it today.
Hey everyone, welcome to UAC Best Practices podcast. This is Dr. Brian here with my co-host, Dr. Alan Miner. What we hope to give you today is a little nugget from one of our special guests from the UAC group. A little nugget that you can take, learn from them, that you could take right away and implement into your practice, your life, anything to take your life, your business to the next level. So without further ado, Dr. Alan, you want to take it from here?
Hey, thanks, Dr. Brian. Good to see you. And we have somebody I feel like I've known for 2 decades, and I probably only known for about a year and a half. And this is Dr. Jake Grinaker, who's out of Fargo, North Dakota.
I wish I was in North Carolina right now.
A little warmer down there.
I don't know. That's right there.
Yeah. I kind of always, Jake was on my radar from Epic coaching days. I knew you were part of that group. And then Jake invited me up with his partner, Christy, to speak at a mastermind coaching program they did. And I don't know, just some people he hit it off quickly with. And Jake came into UAC. He is in my accountability group. And so I've really gotten to know Jake well. And, like so many people in UAC, he's got a few things going on. He has a very successful clinic. He also has coaching business, and then he also does a lot in real estate, helping chiropractors to buy their own practices. But what we're going to zero in on today is the practice side of things, because like so many entrepreneurs, Jake, you've kind of been through this arc of the clinic. So let's start there. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, it was actually good. The reason I started smiling and laughing myself is I wish I've been through an arc. I think I've been through like a whole bunch of arcs, you know what I mean? And and I think like, we've talked about, Alan, you said before we started recording, you always kind of you teach the best from your own scar tissue. And, I think that's, for me, that's been a big journey. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to spin a lot of plates, but the moment that you're spinning a lot of plates without really great people, or you have really key pieces move on or change it, then you're spinning too many plates and they're all hitting the floor, and one of the things that I, when you asked me to be on, and is kind of this whole fallacy of, a passive practice. You know what I mean? This whole idea of, hey, I can get this going and I can be a CEO and just run this associate monster and it's just going to run forever and make me millions. And I can just open up my computer on the beach and see how much money we made today. And if that's happening, someone please call me, because I'd love to hear about it. But what I've seen is that works for a season, and you can really certainly do that. But if you're not really in it and active and kind of being part of it, that can change very quickly and can all of a sudden be something that you don't recognize or that you don't like, you
hit the nail on the head, a season. Like you can definitely step out of that clinic and have it roll along, but to go on year after year. And I ran into the same thing, Jake. I was in a CEO group, and that was really the whole intention. This was an outside group called Vistage. And, I think what they were really promoting is you can have this business, and if it's truly a business, it's passive. You shouldn't have to be in it. You don't buy yourself a job. And it was really interesting. I was around some big $100-250 million business owners, and they all came to the backside of, you know what, that's a load of crap. I tried that, and the business pretty quickly ran into the ground, and I had to come back in. And now It's not the extreme though. Like we've run 4 clinics for years and I don't practice. I'm not in them day to day. I have an amazing leadership team in place. I have great people in place. So I think there is a
Yeah.
balance. I'm also not on the beach all the time either. So talk about that. What now that you kind of I've seen you go through that arc,
Yeah.
what's it look like and what will you do moving forward for you
Yeah,
in
I think
terms
the
of
big thing
having
is
a business that you're
What's realistic?
yeah, that you're owning, but maybe you're not in like you were when you were growing it, but that you're still your energy's around. How are you managing that?
yeah, that's a really great point. And I think again, figuring it out, through scar tissue has probably been the best way. But I think the idea of it being is, again, that we grew really fast and got to this point and we opened a second clinic and things are going really well, and then you feel like you're stepping back more. And what I feel like is that when you give responsibilities, you give away more and more, especially when you give your own superpower, like what really made your clinic so successful, you start to offload some of that stuff. Because what happens is what I've noticed is two things become very evident, usually in hindsight, is that things are either a degree or two off that you don't notice for too long, because it's only a degree or two off and you don't notice it for 6 months or a year when you're in the wrong state or the wrong continent and you're turning around and going, how did this happen? And it happened 1 degree at a time. That's one thing. And the other one just really being that things get way too complicated. One thing that my kind of zone of genius, I feel like over time, is just simplifying very complex things. And what happens is when we start to make things more and more complicated, it just starts to become more complicated. And all of a sudden you have all these people doing all these things that aren't really moving the needle, so in one of the arcs of all of this, I really did come in and really tear things down and be like, guys, we run the most beautifully simple business on the planet. We have like 3 SKUs, right?
Yeah.
Why are we making this so complicated? Like all of the things you're doing, all the things you're tracking, all the things that you spend 4 hours a day doing, who's looking at that? Because I'm not. So if I'm not looking at it and it's not helping me make decisions, why are we doing it? Right. So that's part of it is making sure things don't become a degree or two off track and become more complicated. And then just making sure, for me, it was finding out what is my best served cogwheel in this machine, right? Where do I, and it isn't being over a table all the time. We have phenomenal doctors who provide excellent adjustments as well, if not better than I do. But what role do I fill? And I think it's those two things that I've identified over the years by mainly doing it wrong or giving to someone who doesn't do it as well, is the idea of simplifying our business, making it very simple to where everybody can understand it, everybody knows what direction we're going, and also being the evangelist for not only chiropractic but for us, right? Is that I can be a lightning rod for chiropractic, I'm a lightning rod for our clinic. I can't be out of that role, right? I have to be the one doing that. So and that's where I should be spending my time. And if we're doing that, that's really where we've seen success, is that, let me draw, let me be the draw, and let me simplify what we're doing. And I think that's where we've seen success.
Brian, where's your mind go on that?
I heard a few things there relating to my own line, to my own business there. But one of the things you mentioned was there's a season, right? And I know, Alan, you've seen me go through different seasons with our business. I think it's super important when you come back that you change your perspective. It's not that, like, now I am way more involved than I was, say, 2 years ago in the business, but it's from a totally different perspective. There's a book I'm reading right now, The First 90 Days. It's pretty good so far, but it helps you understand that it's not that you have to change your perspective, right? Like when you started practice and when we started practice, it was pretty straightforward. I've got to get new patients, and then I've got to convert them and provide good service, hire a team to help me with the admin type stuff. And that can take you really far, right? It can get you to a really high level. Now, but you're right. I don't, is what's his name? Amazon Bezos, is he out of business? Did he stop working? Did any of these guys stop working that are billionaires? No, they're still working in those businesses. They're just not doing the same things they did when they started it, right?
That's a beautiful point. It's that evolution. It's hard to It's funny. I think as a chiropractor too, you're in that thing all the time, and there's a tendency to swing that pendulum too far the other way. And you said it right, Jake, like you're offloading too much. That works for a season, but not long term. What else?
But it's important to recognize that not for you or that you feel this, but it's not a failure, right? It's a part of the process.
Yeah.
When you realize the things that you've given up, and sometimes people don't just delegate, they just abdicate. They just
Yeah.
give it away, and because they don't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And they don't really check up on it or monitor it, or because they just hate doing that thing anyway.
Yeah.
So those are the things that are rattling around in my brain as you're
Yeah,
speaking.
I always put that as you either win or you learn, right? I've won a few times. I've learned a heck of a lot more. And that idea of like, okay, that's fine. Like that happened. What do we need to learn from it? And some of the thing, Brian, that's interesting I'm noticing too is that, when you were opening that practice or depending on what season whoever's watching this is in, you look back and, oh my gosh, that was so hard, but it was also such singular focus, right? Like I have to do this and this happens. And that's why you see this growth. And then the pendulum swings. And that's where the complication, I think, happens.
Gets complicated, yeah.
Yeah. And what's really beautiful for me is that, like, through the third arc, of all this stuff we've gone through, it's still that same thing. Like if we look at it, it's still acquisition, processing, it's still that same thing. I don't have to be the one doing it all the time, but there has to be that much focus on it. Like, because that's ultimately what we're doing. Like, who are we attracting? How are we processing them through our funnel to get them to come to this thing that they're doing, and then provide ridiculously great service and outcomes so that they not only get well, but tell friends and stay, pay, and refer and do all these kind of things. And I think for me, it was like the idea, like that was such a singular focus that's why things went crazy. And then, as you said perfectly, Alan, the pendulum swung. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second, we lost focus on really what it is that mattered.
I have the perfect way to wrap this up, and it came from a mentor of mine who passed away recently, is Rick Sapio.
I didn't know he passed
And
away.
yeah, he did. Yeah, last month went to his funeral.
Wow.
We just acknowledged him at the last UAC. But he started a thing called Chiro Finishing School with Patrick Tempo I attended years ago. But one of the things that Rick taught was, I'll give this quote. It's from Oliver Wendell Holmes. For the simplicity on this side of complexity, I wouldn't give you a fig. But for the simplicity on the far side of complexity, for that, I would give you, I forget, like the world or something.
Tree.
So I would give you anything I have. So the analogy they used to use was a baby and a chalkboard versus an iPhone. And obviously, you give a baby a chalkboard, it's really simple. It's really as basic. But I think what you just talked about was this complexity arc, Jake, that as you add more people, you have to put systems in place, you put KPIs in place, you put standard operating procedures in place, you're changing your role. This practice intuitively, or almost the entropy is complexity. And so then the far side of that is the iPhone, which I can only imagine how complex an iPhone is, but a 2-year-old can pick that thing up and start doing stuff on it because it's on the other side of the complexity arc. And I really think that sums up this conversation is as you learn systems, you go through these pain points, these ups and downs, you end up refining. My superpower is I'm good at looking at metrics and solving problems in our practices. Like I can see in 2 seconds what's not working right based on our numbers, and I know where the solutions lie and what we have to change to get things moving. And I just happen to see that in a way and faster that everybody else on my team doesn't. And so that's where I spend my time, is looking at data and looking at, all right, what can we do to change and extend, our lifetime value of somebody or our care plan or decrease dropouts at this point. So anyhow, that's really insightful, Jake. And I think you're right. All of us find ourselves very much in our businesses. This dream of, I like how you said it, you're on a beach collecting money. A lot of entrepreneurs get sold that, but I don't know any who've held on to businesses long term. They're usually in it until the exit, or they're in it long term. And even to use Jeff Bezos and all these guys, they're still usually the chairman of the board of the company. So yeah, you're right, Brian. They're not maybe selling or building the systems like they once did, but they're still the captain of that ship, driving it and overseeing it. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well,
And I
Dr.
think,
Jake,
yeah,
yeah, you have
appreciate.
one parting thought?
Yeah, no, I just my last parting thought of that too is that the more we get removed from what really matters is the more we lose joy in it too. And I think what really happened for me, it wasn't all that long ago. There was a mom in a grocery store with a baby that was obviously sick, right? And it was very quick. Thank goodness it was very quick in my mind. But I thought back to like, gosh, I remember 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I would have stopped this mom to have a conversation in the grocery store. And then it became, how can we get this mom's contact information so we can create an algorithm and get them into a funnel and make sure she watches
Yeah.
to make a decision to get into our office. And it was like, but this mom needs me
Talk to
right
the
now.
mom. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's nothing different than I should talk to this mom right now. So the idea is that for me, in the complexity arc takes you further away from what it is and we're truly powerful for in chiropractic practice, or whether it's something else you're doing. Like, don't get so far removed that you lose the joy and the excitement and the magic in what is it you're doing. And at the end of the day, that face-to-face connection that, hey, we can help is still going to be the most powerful thing. And again, for me, the simplicity and the far side of complexity, I love that, Alan. I've heard that before, but it's been a while. Is so powerfully beautiful, and it just brings that focus back in. Is that what really matters? What really drives the needle? Because at the end of the day, if you're in practice still listening to this, no matter how many team members or how many whatever you have, that person walking in your front door, signing up for a care plan and giving you their credit card is still what drives your business. No matter how complicated you want to make it, that's still at the end of the day what drives your business. So are you putting every ounce of focus and attention that needs to be into it? So hope that helped. I hope that helped some people listening.
That
And
did.
thanks
We
for
have a
having me.
parting question for you, Jake. We always wrap with, and that is UAC. What's the experience been to you? What's it meant to you? How's it added to you being a part of
Yeah.
UAC?
Because I don't know if I've been a part of a room that's like UAC. It's not X, Y, or Z. It's not the format of the weekends. It's not, that's all great. The weekends are unbelievable when we get together. The accountability calls have brought massive value to my life. But if you just want to be in a room of people that elevate your vibrational frequency, this is the group. And that's what I've heard time and time again. People have been in UC a long time, people that have come in after me, is just like you get around the frequency of the people in that room and it has to change. So if you're looking for a room, this is the room. And I encourage all of you to join it.
Well said. We just gave some stats at the last event that we did as a group, 402 million in 2024 of business serving chiropractors. 43 businesses have been formed out of that room. And the average person in the room has been a member like 5.7 years and said they have 10 lifetime friends they've made out of that room. So you do become who you spend your time with. And we're glad to have you in that room, Jake, because we're all better
Happy
for
to
it.
be there.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it, bro.
Appreciate you. Have a
See you
great
guys.
one.
Thank you.
Sure
See
thing,
you
Jake. Thanks for doing it.
time. Okay.